Let's find the schedule and see what we're supposed to be doing. Oops. Oh. Okay, this is March 17th. I'm supposed to start muscle stuff today. Did we get all the way through the bones? Um,
I don't think we did.
we didn't get through all the bones?
Didn't we do chapter 7 last time?
I think we did.
Was, so,
Well, who's got the bone list?
did
We
We went through, we left last week, we were over there looking at cranials, the bones, we got the frontal bones, skeleton.
we didn't.
we did chapter 6, which was what?
So I didn't go through all these bones with
You know, you did do that.
Yeah, you did the
no,
5,
you did do that.
12, with the breakfast, like
the
the.
vertebrae.
Yeah, yeah.
But did I?
did the tarsus and
Yeah.
non-tarsus.
We just did.
Yeah,
like,
that's right.
how we
Get up
were-
about the,
So I did the arms and hands and wrists, but did we do the legs? Leg bones? I should write this. I did the skeletal system in my basic anatomy class too, and I can't remember which. I get confused which class is which. Well, we'll figure it out. I'll go grab the exams from last week.
I forgot to show it too, but I don't feel like I'm making it.
My grandpa was like 93. I
Really just wanted to get my teeth out of the microwave. Okay, so we can, I don't know, we can do this as break. We can pick these up, the exams, if you want them back. Guess we need to finish up the bones, talking about bones. So
the sentence we were reading out, it was on the board.
Oh,
You have to
some
remember the bones right
of the
here.
wrist, yeah, the carpals,
Uh-huh.
yes, yeah. Some lovers try positions that they can't handle.
Okay.
We'll work on that today. We'll practice. I'll help you learn the bones of the wrist. So we did the head and neck and trunk. That's the axial part of the skeleton. And the appendicular is the pectoral girdle, which is Yeah, clavicle and a scapula, and which attaches the arms to the body. But I guess we didn't talk about the pelvic girdle and the legs. So we'll do that. Go through that. Let me pull up chapter 8 PowerPoint, right? That'll help us. Yes. That's not it. Oh, there it is. Okay, so we did this pectoral girdle and the bones of the arms or the upper limbs. So the pelvic girdle or the hips or the pelvis. The pelvic girdle includes the left and right hips, also called coxa or coxal bones. And in between them is this triangle-shaped sacrum in the back. And so the whole vertebral column sits on top of the sacrum. And then under the sacrum is the little tailbone called the coccyx. Yeah, so left and right hip bones, sacrum, and the coccyx is kind of hidden behind there. Where the left and right hips are connected together, the pubic symphysis here, that's a thick layer of cartilage. I learned something about that from Twinkle.
I was wondering if you were thinking about that
Oh,
when you were
yeah.
talking about it.
Yeah. Something about
Chainsaws.
a really disturbing era of childbirth medicine when some doctor who invented a surgical device for cutting through that pubic symphysis, which was actually an early version of the chainsaw. And so for difficult childbirths, he would cut through that so the two left and right hip bones would separate to allow the baby to pass through the birth canal easier. But terrible idea. Some of those women were never recovered from that, right? And so anyway, but that is somewhat flexible, which allows the hips to um, to move a little bit during childbirth. And there's a hormone called relaxin that is present in the female body at the time of childbirth that makes that cartilage more flexible than normal. Okay. Each hip bone is shown in different colors here. Three bones make up each hip bone, but they're all fused together into one solid bone. But the ilium is the upper part. That's the iliac crest here is the ridge at the top of the hips. I can feel them on me. And then the ischium is the part that you sit on. So that's the lowest part in back here. And then the pubis is in front. So the pubis bones are what are held together by that pubic symphysis cartilage. In the hip joint is a ball and socket, like the shoulder. So the femur, the thigh bone has this ball that fits into this socket called the acetabulum. That's all we need to know about the hips, I guess. But don't worry about this false pelvis and true pelvis. That's not important. But the male and female pelvis are shaped a little different. This angle is between the ischium bones is a little wider in females compared to males, and the opening here is wider in females compared to males. And that difference is used by anthropologists and medical examiners to determine if a skeleton is from a male or female. Okay, so then the thigh bone. This is the largest bone in the body, the femur, the thigh bone here. Let's look at a picture. So it has a head at the top that fits into the acetabulum in the form of the ball and socket joint. And the ball is on connected by a neck here, this narrow part, and that's where hips get fractured a lot in older people. Imagine if somebody would fall sideways and land on that trochanter, that bump there, and the impact would break that across that neck. At the distal end, there's a groove here that the patella. This is a posterior view, but you can see this groove that the patella fits into, and it slides up and down a little bit. And we got a cool model back here. The knee joint. We just got this a couple of years ago, but so here's this groove. It's very smooth. It has articular cartilage, and the patella has cartilage on the back, and the patella fits in that groove. And as the knee bends and straightens, the patella slides up and down in that groove. This big this is called either a tendon or a ligament. It's called either the patellar tendon or the patellar ligament, because it could be either one. It's a tendon because this tendon connects to the big quadriceps, the thigh muscles here, so the patella is embedded in that this connective tissue. But it could also be considered a ligament because it attaches the patella to the shin bone here. So ligaments attach bone to bone, tendons attach muscle to bone, so it's both a tendon and a ligament. But this is called a patellofemoral joint, where the patella slides in that groove in the end of the femur. And that joint the cartilage in here can wear out, or it can just get rough. That condition causes pain behind the kneecap, and the condition is called chondromalacia. What does that mean? Okay. What does chondro mean? Chondro means cartilage, right? What does malicious or malice mean? Bad? That just means bad cartilage. It's called chondromalacia patella. If you work for an orthopedic group, you see that a lot. It's common. People, patients show up and my kneecap hurts. And first thing the doctor does is has a patient sit on the edge of a table like this, his knee hanging, and the doctor will put his fingertips on the guy's kneecap and say, okay, straighten your leg. And do this and say, okay, lower it, and he can feel it grinding to his fingertips there, or the roughness in that joint. And, so that's a common condition that is treated with arthroscopic surgery. It's microsurgery. It can just make little tiny cuts. I had it done on my knee. Just go in with these little tiny instruments and just shave the cartilage smooth on the back of the kneecap and trying to humor there. This joint can become dislocated. I saw that once when I was in my 20s, and I was an EMT, and I didn't have a job as an EMT, but I had to do so many hours a year as of EMT duty to keep my certification. And so one thing that you can do is for that is just work at softball games or soccer games, just to be there in case somebody gets hurt. And so I was doing that once for it was a women's soccer league game, and I would just be there for a couple hours, and they'd pay me $30 or something. And usually I wouldn't have to do anything, but there was a collision. Three of these players ran into each other, and they all fell down. And two of them got up, and one of them didn't. And she didn't get up, and she was sitting there on the ground with one leg, her left leg, out straight on the ground in front of her. And she didn't get up, so I started running onto the field toward her, and I got 20 feet away, and I could see what happened. Her kneecap was over here. Like there was just where her kneecap was supposed to be, it was just flat, no kneecap, but there was a big bump on the side. It had slipped out of this joint over here, and I thought, I had never heard of that. I didn't learn about that in EMT training, and I thought, I don't know what to do about this. And so as I approached her, she said, "Don't touch me."
Yeah, don't touch me.
She said, "Don't touch me." She said this has happened before. And this girl, this young lady, she put her hand on there and pushed it back into place. And then a couple others helped her onto her feet, and she wanted to start playing again after that. But I wouldn't let her do that. She, I guess that it happened enough times that this ligament was just loose enough that it would come out pretty easily. But she was used to it. Okay. The lower leg, the two bones in the lower leg, the big one, and the shin bone is the tibia, and then the slender one is the fibula. They sometimes get both of them get fractured together. They call that a tib-fib fracture, tibia and fibula. The tibia is weight bearing. I fractured my right fibula once, and I was able to walk. So that bone doesn't bear weight. Um, uh, uh, so let's look at pictures. Yeah, they're held, the tibia and fibula are held together by this connective tissue, putting them together side by side. Sometimes they will get torn apart from each other down here. This is distal end and right above the ankle, and that's referred to as a high ankle sprain, and it's a pretty serious injury. Some basketball players do that sometimes, and if that happens, they're usually out for the rest of the season. But it's just not like a regular sprained ankle that can recover in a week or two. Okay, so then the ankle bones. There's 7 of them called tarsals. Let's look at pictures, I guess. So that top view there. Let's look at a side view. Might be better for first. So you can't see all of the 7 tarsals here, but you can see this big one, the calcaneus. That's where the Achilles or calcaneal tendon is attached here. That connects to the calf muscle in back of the lower leg. This top bone, the bone that sits on top of the calcaneus is called the talus. And then in front of that is the navicular. So let's look at the top view again. So there's the talus on top, and the calcaneus below that, the navicular in front of the talus, and then there's these 3 bones called cuneiforms. The first, second, and third cuneiforms, also called the medial, intermediate, and lateral. And then lateral to that is this cuboid. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tarsals. So there's 8 carpals, 7 tarsals. I remember the name talus because that's the one on top, so I think of that as the tallest one, the talus. Then the foot bones, metatarsals, and they're numbered from the big toe side to the pinky toe side, 1 through 5. And then the phalanges are the toe bones. Just like the fingers and thumbs, each one has 3 phalanges, except for the big toe, like the thumb, which has only 2. So the 3 times 4 is 12, plus 2 is 14. 14 phalanges per foot and per hand, so 4 times 14 is 56 total phalanges. And so phalanx is a singular, phalanges is plural. Okay. The foot has an arch. This arch shape here, and what maintains that arch is there's a band of connective tissue that's attached here, and it runs all the way along the bottom of the foot and attaches up here somewhere. So it's like an archery bow with this band of connective tissue that's like the string of the bow, and that's called the plantar fascia. The word plantar means the bottom of the foot. And the word fascia, how do you spell that? F-C-I-A? Plantar fascia. The word fascia just means a band of connective tissue. And you may have heard of the condition called plantar fasciitis. It's pretty common. Where the plantar fascia attaches here, it gets irritated and inflamed, and there can be little tiny tears there, and it's very painful. I had that when I was in my 20s for about a year. It hurt so bad, it was like I was walking on the side of my foot all the time. Couldn't put my weight on my foot, and finally I got the right cure for it. Any of you guys ever had that, or you had it? Did you get a good treatment or anything?
They gave me a cortisone shot at first, and then I got those Air Plus plantar orthotics.
Our supports, yeah.
Got like a squishy thing.
Yeah, the good pair of arch supports. I got prescription made ones from a good podiatrist, and I've been suffering for a year, and I swear it cured me overnight. It was amazing. I didn't think it would help. I couldn't imagine that would actually fix it, but it did. I was back to running and everything right after that. But I've read and heard that you don't need to get prescription orthotics made that cost hundreds of dollars, $300, $400, $500. The ones that you can buy off the shelf on the internet or something for $20 or $25, they work just as well. But for me, the ones that worked were really stiff and rigid. They're not at all soft and comfortable. They're hard as a rock, made of very hard, stiff plastic. But they really support your body weight, and they don't collapse under your body weight. Okay. Anything else? Any questions about bones? So I got this little mock or lab practical set up. There's only 6 stations there. The one we do next week, I haven't made it up yet, but it'll probably have, I don't know, 13 stations or something like that. And so each table will be a station. So it'll have something. This won't just be questions on paper. You'll have to, I'll set it up, I guess, before you guys arrive, and I'll have the door locked when you get here because it'll be set up in here. And please be on time because we all have to do it together. And it's going to take me a lot of time to set this up. And if somebody's absent, I have to get it all out again. And so I usually like to just take it down right after class. So everybody will get an answer sheet, and that's all you'll need, an answer sheet and a pencil. And then you'll all come in, and each of you will go to a different station. Maybe I'll make as many stations as there are students, 16. That way everybody can go to a station, and then you'll just answer the questions at that station. It should take a minute or two. And when everyone's done, I'll just say, okay, everybody move to the next station. I'll have arrows on the table telling you what direction to go. You probably go down here and then back through this middle row of tables, and then that way on the back row. and then come back here to number 1. And so we'll just do that until everybody has been to every station. It's a lot of fun, really. Unless you don't know anything, then it's frustrating, probably. So I don't know. Should we start the muscle chapter? Yeah. We'll look at that a little bit, and then we'll come back to do bone stuff. You guys need more time with bones for lab, and we can do that. Look at that practice practical after break. I have some handouts here. Might as well give these. This is a muscle handout. Just some stuff that that might be helpful for you to learn about muscles. What happened? Oh. No, we didn't really talk about joints, did we? Let's look at this short PowerPoint on joints. We talked a little bit about joints, but this isn't very long. So this word articulation means joint. So fibrous joints, these are mostly immovable joints, like the sutures of the skull. It says, or only slightly movable, like the joints between the distal tibia and fibula. So this joint, like I said, these two bones of the lower leg are held together by connective tissue. There's a little bit of flexibility down here at the distal end. That's where I said could be injured and torn apart. That's called a high ankle sprain. Cartilaginous joints, the pubic symphysis, that's considered to be a joint. A little bit of flexibility there with this thick cartilage, and also the intervertebral discs between the vertebrae. Those are cartilage. Remember, fibrocartilage. Synovial joints. These are the movable joints. The joints in the arms and legs and fingers and toes. As we already know, the bone ends are covered with articular cartilage to make them make those joints move smoothly. And this shows that the capsule, a joint capsule that surrounds the joint, and the lining of this capsule is called the synovial membrane, and it produces a fluid called synovial fluid. That's a lubricating fluid in here in the joint, and that's that doesn't. When I used to work in engineering, there was a guy once who was talking. Guy who was a very good engineer, and he was talking about, I don't know, talking about arthritis, and he said he thinks that people with arthritis just need to eat more stuff like butter. That's oily stuff. Typical engineer, just need lubrication. But there's no oil in that synovial fluid. It's not oily at all. It's got these slippery molecules called glycoproteins in there that lubricate. Um, um, okay, this shows the side view of the knee joint. Yes, and side view would be the synovial fluid in here. Um, and this word bursa, have you ever heard of bursitis? Often people have shoulder pain. It's attributed to bursitis. Remember my dad, somebody punched him in the shoulder once, and his shoulder hurt for like a year after that. And he never got it. He never went to a doctor, got it diagnosed. He just called it bursitis because he'd heard of that. He'd known of people who had sore shoulder, and it was called bursitis. So that's what he called it. But I don't think he had any idea what a bursa is. But the bursa is it's a sac of fluid here, and there's another one here, and it allows movement between, like in this case, between the patella and the skin out here. So the patella can move up and down here without dragging the skin up and down with it because it's got this bursa in between, full of some thin layer of lubricating fluid. So that's all a bursa is. It's just like a little balloon with some lubricating fluid in it that allows movement between the structures beneath it and on top of it. And we have bursa in our shoulder. Does the same thing. And if the bursa gets inflamed, there's inflammation, then it'll hurt. Sometimes that inflammation becomes chronic. It can hurt for a long time. Okay, types of synovial joints, types of the movable joints. I already talked about the ball and socket joint. So that's what we have in the shoulder and the hip. So these are they have the most degrees of freedom, or the most different kinds of movement. So they can move, your shoulder can move like this, it can move like this, and it can rotate. Same with the hip, pretty much. And these condylar joints, this is almost the same as a ball and socket joint, except the ball it's not perfectly round like a ball. It's more like an oval, shaped like an oval. So it's like a ball and socket if the ball was shaped kind of like an egg or something instead of a round ball. And so we have them between the metacarpals and the phalanx, so at the base of the finger. So it's very flexible. It can move this way and this way, but it can't twist. It can't twist like a shoulder joint because that ball's an oval. It's not a really round ball. Plane joints or gliding joints. So these are pretty flat surfaces sliding over each other, and these surfaces between some of these carpal joints are pretty flat, so they would be considered as plane joints. Also in between some of the ankle bones and even the vertebrae, because these surfaces at the top and bottom of the vertebrae are pretty flat. where they attach to the discs. Okay, a hinge joint, that's what the elbow and the knee are hinge joints. So it can only move in one plane, so it can your elbow can only do this. It can't move sideways. I mean, I can move my forearm this way, but that movement is in the shoulder. That's not. I mean, if I hold my upper arm still, then my elbow won't move sideways at all. It'll only do this. And the only reason my forearm can twist is it's not twisting at that hinge joint, it's twisting at this pivot joint here, right below the elbow, where this round surface on the radius can rotate on a little notch in the ulna there that allows your forearm to rotate. Same with the knee. A knee can only do this. It can't move sideways, can't twist at the knee. If it does, some ligaments are going to break or something. Okay, then pivot joint. That's what is here with the skull sitting on the top, the C1 vertebra called the atlas. It can rotate pretty smoothly. And also between the radius and ulna, what we just saw, that's a pivot joint. What else? Oh yeah, saddle joint at the base of the so where the first metacarpal of the thumb meets the trapezium, that carpal joint. That's a saddle joint, and it's shaped like this. Let's just think of a horse saddle, or think of like two Pringles potato chips, one on top of the other. So it can it can move like this or like this. So it's pretty much movement in your thumb for that saddle joint. It's not this joint. It's this joint. Okay, then these terms for types of movements at joints, and that's on this is on your handout, or the one on your handout is similar, just slightly different pictures, I think. But abduction and adduct, adduction. So sorry. So to abduct means to take something away, right? So abduction is moving away from the body. So abduction would be moving my left leg away from my right leg, or this would be abduction. Abduction is the opposite, moving toward the body. Bending a joint is called flexion. Straightening is called extending. Some joints can be bent beyond straight, so that would be called hyperextension, like the wrist can hyperextend. There's that word plantar again. Plantar means the bottom of the foot, so plantar flexion means bending the foot downward toward the bottom. What would be the bottom of the foot? Dorsiflexion is bending the foot up at the ankle. And circumduction just means moving a body part in a circular motion, right? Rotating the forearm medially would be like this. Laterally would be like this. We learned the word supine and prone. Supine means if the whole body is supine, it means lying down, face up, right? Prone would be face down. But these terms also can refer to just the hand. So supine means palms up, prone means palms down. The word pronation has another meaning in applied to the feet. Um, so talking about the arch later, some people's arches collapse under the body weight, and so this guy, some people put their weight on the foot and the arch just flattens out, and that's called flat feet, or the anatomical term for that is pronation. Pronation, and that's something that is very, very well known by anyone who does much running. If you go to a running shoe store, the first thing the salesman might ask you before deciding what shoes might be better for you is say, do you pronate? Or do you supinate? If your arches collapse, that's called pronation. So that doesn't mean you need shoes with better arch supports. Some people's feet they have very high arches. Their arches are like too high, and their feet bend kind of the other way, and that's called supinate. Okay, eversion and inversion. Those terms only applied to the ankle. The inversion means like bending your ankle, bending one foot toward the other. Eversion is bending your foot out. If you do either of those excessively, you invert or evert your foot excessively when you're walking, something that would cause a sprained ankle, or even cause a broken ankle. Protraction, retraction, those terms can be used for the whole head, moving the head back and forth, or just the jaw, the mandible can protract and retract. Elevation and depression, raising, lowering the shoulders. And the opposition means just touching any of the fingers to the thumb. That's called opposition. Humans are one of the few kinds of animals who have so-called opposable thumb. Like your dog can't do that. Even some animals that have their front feet look like hands, like an opossum or something. Many of them, they can't do this. Like a raccoon's front feet look kind of like hands, but they don't have opposable thumbs like we do. Okay. Enough about joints. So muscles. How do muscles contract? Is it magic? So muscles can do something that other tissue cannot, and that is it can shorten itself and produce a pulling force. And this is triggered or stimulated by an electrical impulse, very similar to a nerve impulse, which we haven't learned about yet, but learn a little bit about that in this chapter. Contractility, that just means the muscles can contract, they can get shorter. Extensibility, that means that they can elongate as well as contract. And elasticity, they're stretchy. And we already learned about the 3 types of muscle tissue. Sorry. And we learned about the differences between skeletal, cardiac, and smooth. Skeletal, attached to the bones of the skeleton, obviously, and that's the muscle that makes our joints flex and extend and twist. Generating heat, every time a muscle contracts, it generates some heat. That's what provides some of our body heat, that maintains our body temperature. And that's why you get hot when you exercise or work hard physically. Maintaining posture, so your skeletal muscle not only moves your joints, but it holds them in place. Like even if I'm not moving here, it's my muscles that are keeping my legs and my hips and back straight to maintain my posture. Prevents skeletal structure damage, so helps to hold joints together. Mostly our joints are held together by ligaments, but also joints. Also muscles help with that. And your muscles, shield internal organs. Like we learned that the bones of the skeleton protect many of our organs, like your brain is surrounded by bones, your heart and lungs are surrounded by the what do we call that? The thoracic cage, the ribs and sternum and backbones. But what about down here? There's no bones here to protect all these internal organs, my stomach and intestines and liver. But we do have a few layers of thick muscle there that are pretty protective of those organs. Skeletal muscle striated, which means it has those visible lines, across the muscle cells. The fibers or cells are parallel and long like spaghetti. Each muscle fiber or cell runs the length of the muscle. So this biceps muscle is like a bunch of pieces of spaghetti running parallel, all in the same direction. And many nuclei, so you can see them. Each one of these muscle cells is very long, but it has several nuclei along it. Controlled voluntarily. In fact, skeletal muscle is the only tissue or organ in your body that you can voluntarily control. Everything else is involuntary, automatic. You can't voluntarily control your cardiac muscle. You can't speed up your heart rate whenever you want to. You can't voluntarily control your smooth muscle in your internal organs. You can't voluntarily control anything, just except your skeletal muscles. Even what about breathing? Is that voluntary or involuntary? Both, right? So it's involuntary because you can't stop breathing. You can't voluntarily stop breathing and just commit suicide that way. But it's voluntary because you can choose to speed up your breath or take deeper breaths when you want to. But you're not voluntarily controlling your lungs. You're just, because your breathing is done by skeletal muscles. When you inhale air, it's skeletal muscles doing that. So skeletal muscles are activated or triggered to contract by nerve impulses from your nervous system, and we'll see a little bit about how that works. Okay, cardiac muscle of the heart. It's only in the heart, involuntary, just one nucleus per muscle fiber. It's hard to tell, but these muscle fibers, they're not long like spaghetti. They're shorter. Like and these dark lines are called intercalated discs. These are the connections of one muscle fiber to the next one, end to end. And it's hard to tell, but they're branched. Like this one, you can kind of see that it's branched here. That muscle fiber. Autorhythmic, which means the heart has its own built-in pacemaker that causes it to contract every second or so. So even if a heart is removed from a patient's chest, it can keep beating because it has its own built-in pacemaker. But the heart rate is affected. It can be it is slowed down or sped up by hormones and by the nervous system. Now, smooth muscle in many internal organs, like the gastrointestinal or digestive tract, is surrounded by a smooth muscle. Your stomach, your small intestines, your large intestine, they all have their own muscle around them that contracts to move the food along through. The muscles of the uterus for childbirth that push the little guy out through the birth canal, that's smooth muscle. In the eyes, the muscles that move your eyeballs left or right, up or down, that's skeletal muscle, that's voluntary. But we have smooth muscle in our eyes that in the iris, the colored part of the eye that has the pupil in the center, there's smooth muscle that makes the pupil dilate or constrict. That's involuntary. Many of our blood vessels have their own smooth muscle surrounding them, so they can constrict or dilate, get wider. Cardiac muscle was striated. Cardiac and skeletal muscle are striated, but smooth muscle is not. That's why it's called smooth, so there's no lines across. One nucleus per muscle fiber, and it's hard to tell what the muscle fibers are shaped like, but they're on that image. But they're not long like spaghetti, but they're kind of long like this, and they're pointed, tapered, and pointed at the ends, and just one nucleus in there, and they kind of overlap. In a muscle, overlap each other. So this is activated by stretching hormones or nervous system. We'll see examples of this in other chapters. Okay, comparing the three kinds of muscle tissue. Okay, so the discussion or description of how muscles contract here is based on skeletal muscles, but cardiac and smooth muscles contract pretty much the same way. Don't worry about this here. Okay, the structure of a muscle. Well, let's look at this diagram. So this would be a whole muscle, like this thing of the biceps muscle here in front of the upper arm, the one that contracts to bend the elbow. Um, uh, the whole muscle is covered by a thin connective tissue called epimysium, and within this muscle, there are several of these bundles of muscle cells or muscle fibers. So this would be one muscle cell or muscle fiber. And this bundle of muscle fibers is called a fascicle. And that's what this is. So the muscle is made up of several fascicles. Each fascicle is made up of a bunch of muscle fibers or cells. And at the end of the muscle, this would be a tendon where it attaches to a bone. And at the other end of the muscle, there would be a tendon attaching it to bone. So talking about this biceps muscle, it's got a tendon that attaches on the forearm and tendons that attach at the shoulder. This word aponeurosis, it's just a tendon that's flat. So most tendons, like the tendons of this biceps muscle, the muscle tapers down to a tendon that's like a rope that attaches to the forearm bones. But the aponeurosis, an example of that would be where a muscle would attach, like these pectoral muscles of the chest, where that muscle, it's kind of like a triangle-shaped muscle. It attaches here at the shoulder, but then it fans out and attaches all along the breastbone, the sternum here. So that attachment would be like a big flat tendon. That's what's meant by an aponeurosis. Just a big flat tendon. There's that word fascia again. It's a sheet or band of connective tissue. Okay, so the epimysium, which we said covers the entire muscle. Each fascicle or bundle is covered by a paramysium. Connective tissue, and each individual muscle fiber has a connective tissue covering called the endomysium. In a muscle fiber, these are very weird cells. So muscle cells are very different from any other kind of cells. Inside this long spaghetti-shaped muscle cell or muscle fiber, there's a bunch of these long structures called myofibrils. These myofibrils are where the contracting or shortening happens. Each one of those myofibrils can shorten itself and produce a pulling force. And so if all of these myofibrils get shorter, then the whole muscle fiber gets shorter. And if all the muscle fibers get shorter, then the whole muscle gets shorter. And it produces a pulling force. So what goes on in a myofibril? How does it shorten itself? That's the important question here. So here's, again, a muscle fiber or cell and all these myofibrils. And here's an enlarged view of a myofibril. And a myofibril is very long, runs the whole length of the muscle fiber, but it's made up of sections called sarcomeres. So here's a sarcomere, there'll be another one connected to it end to end, and then another one. So there's sarcomere, sarcomere, sarcomere all along that myofibril. Each of these sarcomeres is capable of getting shorter. And don't worry about these terms, I band, A band, and so on. Don't worry about that. I don't care about that. Um, but oh, let's want to skip ahead a little bit here to this. So here again is a sarcomere, a section of a myofibril. And these thick lines and thin lines, they're called thick filaments and thin filaments. So these are just think of them as long rods made of proteins, protein molecules. And so here's a thick filament, and these are the thin filaments, and they overlap each other. The thick filaments are made of a protein called myosin. The thin filaments are made up of a protein called actin. So actin and myosin, they're called the contractile proteins because those are the ones that make the muscle contract. And the way this thick filament overlaps with thin filaments, it looks like these hooks sticking out. Attach from the thick filament that are attaching to the thin filament. That's exactly what happens. These are called the myosin heads. So think of these myosin molecules shaped like a golf club, like the handle of a golf club, and then these heads are like the part of the hit the ball with. I'm trying to play golf. But the heads of the myosin, when they reach up and grab onto the thin filaments of the actin, they become cross bridges. They're called cross bridges. And then, so these cross bridges on the thick filaments, they reach up, they grab onto the thin filaments, and then they bend and pull the thin filaments toward each other. And that's how this whole sarcomere gets shorter. Just the cross bridges on the thick filament grab onto the thin filaments and bend and pull the thin filaments along, and the muscle gets shorter and shorter as that happens. But how does that happen? We need to look at a little more detail about that. Okay, 3 types of proteins it describes here. So the contractile proteins, I said that's the actin and myosin, the thick and thin filaments, because they're the ones that shorten the muscle. Regulatory proteins, well, first let's talk about the structural proteins. Structural proteins are just these other proteins that make up these proteins where one sarcomere is attached to the next one. That would be a type of structural protein. And then this one that attaches the thick filament to the end of the sarcomere, that would be a structural protein. So they don't, the structural proteins don't provide any movement. They just kind of hold the whole thing together. But then the regulatory proteins, they switch on, and it says switch on and off contractions. So how does that happen? We need to see how this works. So here's again, the thick filaments made of myosin. So these long protein molecules, each one has a head sticking out sideways. And this is the thin filament shown in more detail. So every one of these little balls is an actin protein. So the thin filament is made up of a whole bunch of this actin, making a long rod or a long strand of the thin filaments. these kind of look like olives, don't they? With that spot there, that's called a binding site on the actin. So each actin molecule has a binding site where the myosin head can grab onto it and binds to it. So then the myosin head can bend and pull the actin, the thin filament along. But as you can see, these binding sites are covered up by this thing, this long thing that's twisting around the actin, and that's one of the regulatory proteins called tropomyosin. It's a regulatory protein because it covers up the binding sites, and it has to uncover the binding sites to allow the muscle to contract. So it regulates when the muscle can and can't contract. This other one, troponin, these are these football-shaped protein molecules that are attached to the tropomyosin. So these troponin molecules have to change shape to pull the tropomyosin off of the binding sites so that the myosin heads can grab onto the binding sites on the actin. Anybody ever heard of troponin? Do you know what it means if a patient has troponin in his blood? You're working in an ER and a patient comes in complaining of something, and one of the diagnostic tests would be checking, see if there's troponin in that patient's blood. Anybody know what I'm talking about? The heart attack. Because normally you would not have troponin in your blood, but what happens in a heart attack? Damage to the heart muscle, right? And if the heart muscle is damaged, this stuff all starts to break down and come apart. Troponin will be released into the blood, and you can detect that in the blood. So patient shows up in the hospital with symptoms like a heart attack, that would be one of the diagnostic tools, check for troponin in the blood. There could also be troponin in the blood for any kind of muscle trauma. Somebody's in a car accident and gets all banged up and a lot of bad muscle damage, that would put troponin in the blood also. So it doesn't always mean a heart attack. Okay, so how does that happen? How does the tropomyosin get uncovered? How does it uncover the binding sites? It involves calcium. There has to be calcium. Calcium ions cause the binding sites to uncover. But let's look at this. Go back here and look at this diagram of a muscle fiber again. Yeah. Come on. Where was I? Okay. It's muscle fiber and a myofibril. Remember when we learned about cells, there's an organelle called the endoplasmic reticulum in cells, and all cells have that. It's where new molecules are made in cells, new proteins and lipids are made in the ER, the endoplasmic reticulum. Well, there's in muscle fibers, muscle cells, they have a special kind of endoplasmic reticulum called sarcoplasmic reticulum. Sarco means muscle. So that's what this is here. The sarcoplasmic reticulum, that's it's hollow, and it kind of surrounds the myofibril. And it's hollow, but it contains calcium ions. That's its special job. It just contains a lot of calcium ions. And the plasma membrane of a muscle fiber also has a special name. It's called the sarcolemma. This word. Plasma membrane. Remember, every cell has a plasma membrane covering it, including muscle fibers have this, but it's called a sarcolemma. And this sarcolemma, the plasma membrane of a muscle fiber, it looks like this. So this is the surface of the muscle fiber. This is the plasma membrane or sarcolemma, but it has these tunnels from these are like extensions of the sarcolemma that dip down into the inside of the muscle fiber alongside of the sarcoplasmic reticulum. Sarcoplasmic reticulum contains calcium ions. So when a muscle is going to be, in order for a muscle to contract, there has to be an electrical impulse on the sarcolemma that will then travel down along these tunnels they're called T-tubules, but the electrical impulse comes down here, and that causes the sarcolemma to release calcium ions. And then the calcium ions will just flood the whole area here. And when the calcium ions come into contact with the troponin, calcium causes the troponin to change shape. When the troponin changes shape, it pulls the tropomyosin off of the binding sites. So now the binding sites are exposed so that the myosin heads can grab onto them. And then the myosin heads will bend and pull the thin filaments and shorten the whole thing. So here again, we see the binding sites covered up by tropomyosin. The troponin is attached to the tropomyosin. When this changes shape, it'll pull the tropomyosin off and uncover those binding sites. Okay, we talked about the structural proteins. Don't worry about these names, but those are just these different types of proteins that hold the whole sarcomere together. But they're not the ones that do the contracting. So here's another kind of diagram showing a muscle fiber, but this would actually be very long. It's just shown very shortly. But so here's where this represents the sarcoplasmic reticulum. So these are all calcium ions in here. And so if there's electrical impulse on this sarcolemma, it'll travel along and down into these tunnels, these T-tubules, that would cause the sarcoplasmic reticulum to release calcium ions. The calcium ions would flood all of this. When the calcium ions would come into contact with the troponin, it would cause them to change shape, uncover the binding sites. Looking for more pictures. Yeah. So here we see again, calcium would come out of the sarcoplasmic reticulum. The calcium we see here, when the calcium contacts the troponin, it'll change shape and cause the tropomyosin to move out of the way of the binding sites. That allows the cross bridges to grab onto the actin, and the cross bridges will bend and pull the thin filaments toward each other, so the whole thing gets shorter. Simple, right? So what causes the electrical impulse to trigger this whole thing to happen? This is called a neuromuscular junction. So this would be a neuron. So I decide in my brain I want to bend my elbow, send nerve impulses to these muscle fibers in my biceps muscle. At the end of that neuron is this, it's called a synapse. The synapse is just a connection between a neuron and something else, in this case, a muscle fiber. So the nerve impulse comes along here, reaches the end of the neuron, and these are little vesicles containing neurotransmitter molecules. In this case, at a neuromuscular junction, the neurotransmitter molecule is called acetylcholine, or acetylcholine, abbreviated ACH. So that's what these little molecules, these neurotransmitter molecules, are released. And they just drift across this little gap, and then when they come into contact with the surface of the muscle fiber here, it'll cause an electrical impulse to spread out over that whole sarcolemma, the whole plasma membrane covering that muscle fiber. So nerve impulse causes an electrical impulse on the muscle fiber that comes down these T tubules, causes the sarcoplasmic reticulum to release calcium. The calcium causes the binding sites to be uncovered, which allows these cross bridges to reach up and grab onto the binding sites on the actin. So then the heads of the actin, or the heads of the myosin, the thick filaments. So there's a lot of pictures showing the same thing in different ways here. But so here's showing one of those cross bridges, a myosin head attached to the actin of the thin filament, and then we see that it bends. So what's producing the it takes energy to do that. Where's the energy coming from? What do cells use for energy when they do anything? ATP. So every time a cross bridge attaches and bends and releases, it uses one ATP molecule. In fact, when a cross bridge attaches, it attaches and bends, it won't release until a new ATP molecule comes along. So here we see, ATP, remember this adenosine triphosphate. To get the energy out of that, it's like a charged battery. To use the energy in that, the third phosphate is released, and then it's adenosine diphosphate. There's only two phosphates left. But the energy that was holding that phosphate on, that's what's used to bend that myosin cross bridge. In our muscles, we always have some cross bridges attached in our muscles, even when they're not contracting. You've heard of rigor mortis. Everybody know what rigor mortis? Rigor means stiff, right? Like as in rigid means stiff. Mortis means what? Dead. Right? Mortis means dead. So rigor mortis means the stiffness that occurs in death. After several hours, after a person dies, the joints stiffen up. But it's not really the joints that stiffen up, it's the muscles. Because we always have some cross bridges attached in our muscles, even when they're not contracting. So I have cross bridges attached in my biceps muscle and in my triceps muscle. So if I die and those cross bridges are attached, if there's no ATP delivered to those cross bridges to cause them to release, then that muscle just stuck at that length. It can't stretch, it can't get longer or shorter. Same with this one. So if my biceps muscle is stuck at that length and my triceps muscle is stuck at that length, my elbow ain't moving at all. That's what causes rigor mortis. Because when you're dead, there's no more ATP being produced and no more ATP going to those cross bridges. So the
I had a question. So when somebody die, they get stuck in that position, they break their bones to put them like they want to.
after a while, the rigor mortis releases because after a while, the decomposition begins, and that's when the cross bridges release, and the joints loosen up.
Okay.
So rigor mortis is not permanent.
Oh.
Okay. 7:30. So this is called a sliding filament mechanism of muscle contraction. How the thick and thin filaments slide past each other or are pulled. The thick filaments pull the thin filaments along to shorten the muscle and produce the pulling force. Here again, shown how the thick filaments, the thin filaments overlap, but here that with the cross bridges attaching and pulling, the whole thing is shorter. Okay, this just describes the steps in the sliding filament mechanism. So you need to understand this. In your handout, there's some diagrams of that, and there's a list of the steps that are in the wrong order, and you're supposed to put them in correct order. I think. Did you type on that?
No, did you give me the one with all the answers?
Yes. I didn't know whether it had the
Is
answer.
this the one you need?
But this, if you want that one, that doesn't have.
I didn't notice
Is
it.
the second page that? No, that doesn't have the answer. I guess it's just your first page is different. Okay, what else do we need? I don't know, we don't need to go through all of this tonight. Length tension relationship. So a muscle is strongest at when it's about halfway contracted. It's when your muscle is fully outstretched, so if this sarcomere was way longer, then these thick and thin filaments would not overlap very much. There would not be very many cross bridges to attach, so it couldn't produce much force. And when the muscle is most of the way contracted, the thin filaments start running into each other. And so that prevents producing a lot of force. So when it's like this is when it's the strongest. A lot of overlap. There's still space between the thin filaments that they can move toward each other. And a lot of cross bridges. Okay, let's talk about ATP a little bit and then quit on this stuff and go back to bones, work on bones the rest of the time. And look at that, practice, live practical. ATP, ATP keeps coming up because provides the energy or it's how cells store energy that they then use for most of the processes that go on in cells, including muscle contraction. So, all the cells in your body use ATP. They recharge those batteries, those ATP, like little rechargeable batteries, by breaking down nutrient molecules like sugars to get the energy that was holding that sugar molecule together, and that energy is then used to recharge ATP molecules. And then when the cell needs energy for anything, it'll use the ATP for that. So, but muscle cells, skeletal muscle cells use a lot of energy. It takes a lot of energy to do this. And so they need a lot of ATP. Your muscles need to make a lot of ATP. And it takes oxygen to, those chemical reactions that break down the nutrients like sugars require oxygen. That's why when you use your muscles a lot, they're using a lot of ATP, and it takes a lot of oxygen to make more ATP. So that's why you breathe fast when you're using your muscles. But your muscle cells have some tricks to make more ATP in ways that your other cells of your body can't do. One of them is this stuff called creatine phosphate. This is a molecule that is stored in your muscle tissue all the time, and it's stored phosphate. Remember, ATP is adenosine triphosphate. So to recharge ATP, you add a phosphate to it. And so by just taking the phosphate off the creatine phosphate and put that right on the ATP, it's a way of that your muscle cells, your muscle fibers can make ATP really quickly. Just from this stuff that they have stored in the muscle tissue. Cellular respiration is the normal way that all your cells use to make ATP. It requires oxygen. It's called aerobic cellular respiration. Requires oxygen to break down sugars and fats and stuff to get the energy out of them. But if you well, your muscles also have something called myoglobin in them. You know what hemoglobin is, right? What is hemoglobin? Anybody know? Where do you have hemoglobin? In your red blood cells, right? Hemoglobin is the protein in red blood cells that the oxygen attaches to. So you inhale oxygen, it goes into your blood, and then that blood hitchhikes on the hemoglobin in the red blood cells. Your muscle tissue has something similar called myoglobin. Myo means muscle. So the myoglobin in your muscles always has oxygen attached to it. So your muscles have their own storage of oxygen attached to that myoglobin. Because your muscles need so much oxygen. When you're working your muscles really strenuously, and they need to be making a lot of ATP, any extra oxygen they can get is going to help. But what happens when you use your muscles so much that they use up all the ATP? They just can't make ATP fast enough. They've used up all the oxygen. Your blood just can't deliver oxygen fast enough so that your muscles can make ATP to keep up with what your making them do. They're just running out of energy. Then your muscles can switch to this anaerobic glycolysis. And anaerobic means without oxygen. So your muscles, other cells in your body can't do this. They can't make ATP without oxygen. But your muscles, your skeletal muscles can do this. When they're running out of oxygen, they can switch to this anaerobic. Anaerobic means without oxygen. So they can continue to make some ATP without oxygen to keep your muscles going a little bit longer. But the problem, there's two problems with it. One of them is by the normal aerobic cellular respiration, from one sugar molecule, one molecule of glucose being broken down, that releases enough energy to recharge about 36 ATP molecules. But by this anaerobic method, it makes only two ATP molecules from one glucose. It's not nearly as much, but it's better than nothing. When your muscles are on the verge of fatigue, they just almost can't go any longer. This can keep your muscles going for another minute or two. Another problem is that this kind of anaerobic means of making ATP, it produces lactic acid as a byproduct. And lactic acid is what causes your muscles to burn when you use them, when you exert your muscles too much. And when that happens, when your muscles are actually burning, you can feel your muscles burning. That means you've used up all the ATP, used up all the creatine phosphate, all the oxygen in the myoglobin. Your blood can't deliver oxygen fast enough to make more ATP. So your muscles have switched to this anaerobic method, and that's caused the lactic acid to build up. And now your muscles are burning and they're completely finished. Now your muscles are just exhausted. We call that muscle fatigue. And now you just have to rest. Your muscles just can't contract anymore. You have to rest for a while for oxygen to be delivered, to build up some more ATP. That's called oxygen debt. You've used up all the oxygen, and it takes a while to pay back that debt of oxygen in your muscles so they can produce enough ATP to be ready to contract again. Okay, this is a type of this anaerobic glycolysis. It's a type of fermentation. It's actually the same process that's used for that some bacteria are capable of doing, and that's used to make certain kinds of foods like sauerkraut and soy sauce. That flavor in foods like that is the lactic acid. That's what that flavor in sauerkraut. What you're tasting is the lactic acid from that fermentation. Okay, is that enough muscle stuff for tonight? Let's take a break and do some other stuff. Do some lab stuff. I've got these 6 patients set up. I'll just uncover the questions. And if you want to do this, actually do it as if it were a lab practical. I made up little answer sheets you can fill out if you want to, just station to station. Let's just grab it, they're alphabetical.
I didn't use the green rock, that was you, I was told you, Frank, that ain't you now. I was saying something. Friend for real. I don't know what it is, but I don't like it. I don't like it. It's on my nerve every week, you come in here. It's good. And they need to clean up. So that it ain't gonna never come in.
Pretty good, isn't it?
Yes.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, my God. I'm so sorry.
Don't give a drink at the car.
I hate it was upside down. Nine is the plate. And you said that's like white and then 8 is green, right?
You need to get over there. Okay, yeah. I'm gonna write the words down.
I just finished it too, and I don't even remember now.
Yeah, that's why I'm like, I need to say it. I got,
On this song, just like right here on your shoulder. Is it this one? No, you're not ready.
this was in what, in eight. I mean, like, this was in home. Yeah, he was. And just. Yeah, that was on seven, work. The smallest one. Yeah. Yeah, I was confused. I think till a little bit. That must be like 19. We got it. Well, you know, even when you got to go there, people got to learn like so.
Platelets is always dollars.
See, this gonna be like, what, 13 tables?
That's a platelet.
You said 13 tables?
Next week,
Yeah.
I might do 16, so that's how many students there are.
Oh, and this is state, right? State of the kitchen. Okay.
I would write on it. I would write on it, just know what it is. Yes, 13.
And then the.
Yeah, that's supposed to. Oh.
No, right. But it was not friendly. Yeah, this don't really look that. This is yeah. Feel like he's in the way.
That's the
Right.
We was going to go for it.
It's 10. No, he was 10 times.
I was trying to example him. Well, I'm more clean survey on
The medications,
in that
yeah,
area.
that like, that's what's like.
More diversity.
Yeah, like medicine would be like different.
Yeah. But I come down here this way.
I mean, I'm just like, I love that.
But I say,
What number is that? Why are you numbers?
I'll be there, but
I'm just
Yeah.
I'm just thinking like
Yeah.
Is that the right answer?
That was great.
And then it's like eight, because they operate twice a week.
beginning. Yes.
Yeah, they start out pretty.
Spring.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I.
Yeah, so where's the phone? 11 is better. So this is, so remember there's two rows of purple bones, and you start both from the stomach. So first, some others try position. So that's F, right?
Yeah.
Some lovers try, I'm sorry, I'm wrong, I'm sorry. This is the first row is 1, 2, 3, 4. But this is 2 bones. So some lovers try position. Remember pisiform, shape like a P? That's the P. And then you start over with the thumb side again, the second row. That they,
You said you had an answer sheet for this one?
no, that's the fun thing. I didn't make it. We need to burn that.
Yes, can we?
Together.
You know, for right or wrong. Don't be up there feeling confident in this wrong way.
You make sure everybody's.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, if you want your exams, help yourself. The grades are on the Scantrons that are inside. They're alphabetical, more or less.
Oh. Don't worry, label. Okay. No. Get up the stage.
Now you're changing it.
No, I was trying to move you.
Well, when you move it, it changes the answer. Who's not here? Guess I'll take attendance. What is this? 17th. Graceland is here. Twinkle is here. Mary is here. LaTracy here. Kelly. Hannah. Hannah's not here. Kahela not here. Tiana not here. Shania not here. Sherry's not here. Ashley, Crystal's here. Sharonda, Shaquala, right? Yes. Kaylin, okay, and Keisha is here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay.
And then the little numbers are the ones we got wrong, right?
Yeah.
What, do the numbers mean anything? Like, is that the answer? Like, one is
Yeah,
A? Okay.
that's the right answer.
Okay, got it.
Is it?
Is the right answer?
Yeah, put numbers instead of letters. So one means A, 2 means B. Was that hard?
What, the line?
No. Maybe give you an idea what you need to study a little more.
Yeah.
I don't know the answers. You guys tell me the answers. So, what's number 1? Nervous tissue, right? No, right. I think it looks like kites. That's a pretty good image. That looks like kites. And then number 2, G, stratified squamous, bunch of layers of thin flat cells, right? Epithelial. And then 3, what is it? F. Yeah, adipose. Remember I said I think it looks like chicken wire. Kind of does, right? All that white space is just where the fat is in those cells. Number 4, on the shoulder, what is that? D, the acromion process, right? That's at the AC joint, where the acromioclavicular joint, where the acromion attaches to the clavicle. So that's part of the scapula. The acromion. Number 5, what is that? Oh, on its head. What is that? Coronal suture between the frontal and parietal bone, is that right? Coronal. And number 6 here at the hip joint, what's that socket called? The hip joint socket. Acetabulum, which is letter I. Then this one, what is this? Do we recognize what kind of tissue that is?
To the red section?
I'm sorry, I didn't have a colored printer. printed this in the office, in black and white. If it was in color, it'd be more obvious what that is, but what is that? Huh?
Connective tissue.
I'm scared to say something
Well,
wrong.
it's blood, it's a blood smear, right?
Okay, that's what,
So those are all red blood cells.
that's what I.
Remember, red blood cells do not have a nucleus, but the white blood cells do have weird shaped nucleus. The bigger ones with the nuclei are the white blood cells. And what are the little tiny ones? Platelets. So, I hope if this was in color, you'd all recognize what this is. This is the blood smear. Okay, number 10 through 12. You know, this forearm bone on the thumb side, what is it? The radius, right? The radius bone of the forearm is on the thumb side. The ulna is on the middle finger side. So number 11 is a what is it? Yeah, H, metacarpal. A hand bone, but it's the one to the top. And number 12, what is that little, this bone, the little carpal, which one is it? The hamate? Yeah, hamate. Hamate's the one with the little hooks sticking out. And if you go through that mnemonic, some lovers try positions that they can't handle, it's the last one. It's the fourth one in the second row of buttons. Yeah, this had the wrong numbers on the section sheet. It should be 13 through 15. But, so number 13, some stones here.
See.
These are zygomatic, so that's the cheekbone, right? The zygomatic. And 14 is the bone that has the upper teeth in it. That's G, maxilla. And this bone, on the side of the right side of the cranium, what is that? The parietal. And this one, the microscope, the number 16 is on this lens. What is that lens?
H.
Yeah, it's an objective lens. Where's the ocular lens? That's these.
Yeah, I think it's.
And what's this knob with the 17 on it? What's that? The stage knob. If you turn that, it moves the stage. Right? The focus knobs are these on the side of the upright. And the number 18, what's the magnification? 100? How do you get that? Yeah, so the ocular is 10. The objective lens that's over where the specimen would be, that's 10 also. So you multiply them together, right? So 10 times 10 is 100. That's right. What if I had 3 vertebrae? A real big one, a real small one, and in between size. And I say which is cervical, which is thoracic, and which is lumbar. Which would be
Cervical is small.
cervical? Yeah,
Yeah.
so they're smaller at the top and they get bigger. So the cervical are the smallest, thoracic are in between size, and then the lumbar are the largest. Because the lower they are, the more weight they have above them, because they have the support, so they're larger and more robust. Okay. How about you guys spend the rest of the time studying bones? Okay. I mean, I expect you to do that. Don't sit here on your laptops or cell phones doing something non-bone related. This is because you're going to have to know this stuff next week. It's a week away. Don't do what a lot of students think and think, I'll just study the pictures at home, because it's not the same. It's not the same. When you study pictures, then you come in here and see the actual skull model in 3 dimensions, and it's not color-coded like the pictures in the book. It's different. So please make use of this time. And if you need more time during this week, whenever I'm here, you can come during the day. If there's not a class in here, if I'm here, I'll open the door if it's not open. The door's usually open all day. And if I'm not here, just go across the hall. Either Ashley or Natalie will ask them. They'll unlock it for you. And on Mondays, I'm here all day. But some of you guys just have been coming every Monday. I'm in the room across the hall for tutoring from 3 to 5, and then but this room could be open if you can come early. If you want to come early next week for an hour or two before the lab practical, I'll have it open. I'll have to, I don't know how I'll work that, because I'll have it, maybe I'll set up the lab practical in another room so that you could come in here and look at stuff if you wanted to. And then we just go take the practical in the micro lab or something. That might work good. Okay. If there's any handouts from previous weeks that you lost or something, and if you'd like one, ask me. I might have extras in my office. Like if you lost your bone list or something, I probably got more.
Mr. Beck, do you have a,
Yeah. Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, my glasses, so I can see, yes.
Lord knows what he's doing. Yeah. Here you go. This is.
The little bones in the end. This is the last one. Or wherever they, like on free. This was like an April first. I thought this would be good. The color on it. Yeah. Like right here. Okay, see, I'm looking, I'm thinking it's more in the socket.
Yeah, the maxilla comes all the way out.
So this one, you'll be over. I did better on that one.
I mean, now we can tell it on here, you'll be kind of cold, but. And this is Veronica? They know it is another one.
I'm not really, I'm not.
So yeah, everybody is the night.
But it's not. This the maxilla. The only one.
On the green part, the edge.
I will start from the, this starts from the, from the phone.
I know that, and then I have like the color things. I don't know names. I know about that one.
The whole thing? The whole thing?
Yeah, and the whole thing just, I don't remember it. It was, well, the one that I paid was 200. That's because I didn't take my bones and stuff. I can't remember a lot. That's how I went.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I already put it in. So, and I got posters. My living room was just like this. I don't like, I already been on the head, so I'm touching it to see.
We want some of that's
Which
I'll have
one?
it walk in the-
Oh, I had to move myself to the first level of the house. She's like, I go to the kitchen and see the So I, and my mom, she doesn't. Like I ordered because once you were sitting off Amazon, and I'm just like, and it's not. Search my brand. And it comes on, and then I got to use it. And I feel like I used to, I used to know, but I don't use it. So.
We can find out on that fancy machine.
I did it differently, but I got the same answer. So I did it.
You didn't pick up your exam, you're here.
You want to use the little one or the big one?
Cause you know a little bit more about it.
Okay, you want to start with the head first? Yeah, the last one.
Yeah, and then there's 3 T's. Or sorry, 2 T's, yeah. Try, 3 T's. This is the try,
It's
the
not
one,
just
the one that starts with our try, delivering or something like that. Then there is the track exam and the track exam.
With working, school, kids, their school. I gotta do that.
Okay, got it. Alright, what would you want?
You know this part?
Oh, I'm gonna give you that, that's what my lead.
When you get the lane, yeah, when you get the lane, you'll never
Yeah,
forget.
and I won't give it, but I already remember this one because it's the little bone and it's like, until a little
Now, you know
bit.
there's, what is,
Little tibia.
because I'm bad with sutures.
For a long time, for years, I was got that confused and
So
I
all of
took
those
a
are the
medical
little
terminology
ones.
class last semester and the
Yeah, but
teacher
they're
gave us
called
that.
big
I was like, oh, I'll
different
never
names.
forget it.
You got. Yeah, this is, all of these.
I may have an extra one.
Is there one that listed all of them?
I believe,
So, but that's what we, and there's 3 of them.
for the causes.
That's the corona one.
Oh, and some.
Anatomical terminology, we had that one, and all the bones. Bones on the back.
I'm having to clean out.
Yeah, there's
That's how it was, I got it, but I couldn't find it. So it's gonna be
I was just looking at it last night.
So basically, it's gonna be mostly all bones.
Yeah, girl. And a lot of, I'm saying, like, a lot of the bones are named, like, if you pay attention to the word, a lot of them have like the same ending name, but like the first part of it might change, like try, plus 2 or 3. The rest of them might be the same, you know what I'm saying? So like, for example, in the football, there's like the third commit run, the second commit run, the first commit run. They go in order, you can just remember to commit run, and which way they go, 1, 2, 3, all of them the same. You know what I'm saying? But I don't know if I got these from you.
I don't know, you know what I mean? Like, I
Open it right up to it, but they don't have, I don't have. But I think, I don't know, I think it's in the middle.
what about this one?
Even if
Is that the same as this one?
Google it. You can find the blank. And, or you can take it.
Like, I know most of them,
Yeah,
I just got
like
like.
cover it up, put a piece of paper there, take copies of it, and then go back and fill it in. Fill it in.
What is this one? What's this?
This is the middle one.
What's a,
Are those your notes?
Oh, I love it.
Mm-hmm.
so what's that, Twinkle, what's this? You know, that's your-
This is in the massage.
What, the SAG? So,
I think that's the, I ain't got my glasses on, y'all, I can't see, I'm not trying to steal it from you. So this is the front.
That's
This would be
your cardinal.
the coronal.
Because what do you say?
oh, you said the O6 or the L?
Black one was gonna be tiered up.
Yeah.
Oh, lambdoid, yeah. That's the suture though, right? But the actual part of the bone part is the suture, right?
Yeah,
So the suture part is the lambdoid, but the bone part is the
O6, yeah.
So the bone is.
This is all occipital bone.
So that's your bone.
That's this one.
Scaphoid.
Yeah,
it's all right.
That's that one.
This is your, okay. I got this head. So this is the middle.
It's this one.
Okay. We just right
Yeah.
ahead.
Yeah, break it.
Occipital? Or, okay, that's all good. Something, the L.
Remember this bonus, by the time you finish school, you're gonna be shouting out, and boy, like, it's, second nature. I remember a day when I couldn't say that word.
Yeah, right.
This little position, this one here. You got it. I already know I'm starting. That's your console. That's your console. For some little. Position, yeah. Oh, wait, position. That. Girl. Okay. Now, these are for, I got first. That, what's it?
Yeah.
Wait, this is your console, right? Wait, this is your console. So what about this is so carpal is right partial. Oh,
Or,
parietal? That's the parietal?
Yeah, that's right.
Partial. Okay, I see what you're saying. So this is your temporal, this is your parietal. So but all of these are both your partials. Okay.
All right, y'all, be real.
Everybody. So frontal, that's the open. This is your. That, sagittal? Sagittal. So this is your Sagittarius structure.
Yeah, that's
I didn't even know that. I know. Oh, God, now we have
Yep,
like.
you got other stuff? Yep.
Frontal is right here.
Oh,
So frontal, parietal, occipital,
oh,
Alright, now.
frontal, parietal, occipital,
Alright, your eye sockets,
diagonal,
these are like your
temporal,
external, wait, what's that?
medulla,
Your eyeballs, what is that?
you should do the equals.
It is. How do you?
what's that? That's right here.
Your
Yep, there you go.
ethmoid bone? Which is this like this side?
Yes, they're right
Right here.
at the inside.
So diagrammatic vein, right here. Okay. This is diagrammatic.
Your.
You went inside, that's this.
Parietal,
Your nasal bone, right here. Okay, so that's your nasal bone. on the outside. There. What is that? So your chin?
That should be the M,
The
A,
N.
yeah, mandible.
Mandible. So that's your chin, your mandible bone.
You don't all say it here.
Mandible.
And this is the next, right here, right above your.
So maxilla. Middle. Mandible.
And you know this is the B bone.
Right here.
B O.
These are what?
The B.
Vomer. That's your vomer. That's the one that's mandible. Wait, that's your mandible? Maxilla. So mandible, maxilla, this is your.
What is that?
What
is this?
That's your fridge,
That's a picture of the what? This is the picture of your what? What do you have in your face? You have one.
your nasal bone. Oh my God.
Yeah,
The nasal bone, okay, and the eye socket is, I forgot.
The E.
Is that common with movements and tendons or?
Your ethmoid, your ethmoid,
Okay, okay.
E for eye, ethmoid.
There you go.
And for nose, for nasal, your nasal bone. Maxilla, maxilia,
What you're saying is this right here.
so that's your max, okay, so. So nasal, ethmoid, or maxilia?
Yeah, something like
So
that.
maxilia, okay, so, what's your name? Max. I don't know how to, pronounce it. Your mandible. Mandible. Maxilla, mandible. Your nasal, that's your EX. Okay. Okay.
Is that right?
I need to know what phone did you mean.
Everyone gets
Mandible, Mathematics,
Like,
math,
all
okay, and the occipital, I mean, the form and magic is back there by the occipital.
This is.
The whole, Mr. Beck, where's the form and magic?
And is this the opposite? The opposite.
Okay, so what the, that's the big one.
Is this the opposite compound, right?
There are several condyles.
Girl, I'm not sure now.
On the occipital.
I know. I was like, hey, I thought it was a book or something, such a book that y'all had. And I was like, oh, wait, I know they never know. Let me find out, I thought I was getting extra with my different color pens, you know? But yeah, that's so serious.
I only study, like, I literally
It's
wrote.
where it sits on top of the C1.
I literally have sat down and wrote, like, any of those questions.
So
Like,
that's
all
what
of
I'm
them, because I remember by writing.
Or
I do too.
So I wrote all those questions, but I would write the questions with all of the answers to those questions. So I can read it like a book, but I also remember I'm writing it out. So I have chapter 3, 4, 5 written.
Oh,
I'll do that.
Hey, come to court, Mr. Beck.
80s,
Right.
20 and 25 pages long, bro.
I was getting a little overwhelmed with they were all these bones.
It works well for me because I learned writing, so it's like I read, then I kind of have like, know what we're gonna talk about in class.
Okay.
You know, I might not understand everything from what I read, but then I have a general idea, you know, and then you come in here, let him explain it to me, and it kind of clarifies anything that I have questions about. And, for me, I usually kind of just reread over my notes. For me,
So
I
what's
know
the,
what I know, so if there's something that
Is
I
this
know,
part, the
I know, I
temporal
don't
part of
focus
this?
on that.
Right.
And I try to go focus on the things that I don't know. So, for example, I'm not studying before I ever read on or anything, which I probably have an advantage for most people here. I'm taking this class for
See that little card?
15 years ago, but I have good teachers.
The back part of the cheek bones are.
Way more than I ever thought in her. When I was taking this class for the first time, I was
Zygomatic, temporal, zygomatic, how
they
they
were
were
like, I even told my teacher, I was like, you know, and she was like, yeah, you know, these are things that you actually keep with you, and you think you're not gonna remember.
This is the temporal
And I
process,
said,
this is the zygomatic process. This is the zygomatic process.
It is, I told you, I said, watch this
Well,
big come up here. It confused me.
and then, like,
So, zygomatic process is of the temporal is back here.
but, you know, it works for me, you know.
This is the temporal process.
Right.
But
See
this
how,
is the
like, you've already
zygomatic
been
process.
given part of the
The temporal process.
and keep writing over and over.
Both of them
Not only will it
together.
help you remember the actual names, but
So it's
I know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about my open arm.
Well, I mean, I'm gonna be studying, I'm like, I don't.
you pronounce them all differently.
Same spot, 3, 5 on. I'm gonna go.
Each hour, I'll be learned it. Word.
I'll be down this week, because he came on in and just screwed up there. I don't know what to do. I was doing good, man.
It just comes out.
I was
saying, now,
so you're
this
wrong
person,
as an artist.
this person. So,
That's all.
That's it, I'm gonna give you something, or I need to be, I don't know where I got it, I don't know how y'all get this, to make you guys this.
Yeah.
So you go split the bone.
So this is 3 different things. This is a bone plate right here. The artist plate.
Yeah.
And you know, when you get good at it, and get all in right, then you know it's the next thing, you know what I'm saying? Because you will overwhelm
Yeah,
yourself.
like, I wanna see like your head, and then like my chest, and then like, work your way down.
This is something that my friend got, So when I took the first time, I was looking at these things before.
Oh, they use our fitness. Yeah, so you just gonna be
About
like,
bones, so like, where is
yeah,
it?
make it, like,
Yeah, so tuberous is gonna be like a small protrusion sort of trauma, so tuberosity is gonna be in the.
Legs.
It's like in between here, yeah.
Oh,
And, let's see, foramen, that means hole.
that's the,
This-
where the
this
spine
right here?
comes in.
Foramen,
Yeah.
just a foramen, not magnum, just foramen means hole. So this hole here is a something foramen, this hole here is a something foramen. Any hole on here is gonna be a something foramen,
Okay.
okay? Just like. So, let's see, or let me do one I'm familiar with, I don't remember these all that well. So like, a process is gonna be,
What's that?
right, this is a process, something process. Anytime
So
you
anything
process,
that's
it's gonna be
sticking out.
something that's gonna be pointy and sticky out like this. This right here is a condom. Anything that's kind of like a gold, protrusion, or whatever. You're gonna have a lot, look, you're gonna have a lot of, these are condoms, these are condoms.
Okay, so it's like a,
These are
so
condoms.
suit, not pointy, so like a
So,
suit.
right. So if you,
Yeah, round.
if you learn these first,
Yeah.
and know what those are, it will be easier for you to go back and say, okay, this is the occipital foramen. You know what the occipital is, you know foramen means hole, occipital foramen. It's a lot easier for you to just put those words together. Even if you don't know, a lot of times, it's big on vocabulary.
Look,
I personally feel like they should make medical terminology a prerequisite for this class, just because it would just be so much easier.
Some places do, you gotta have medical terminology.
I took medical terminology last semester when I was taking AP2, and I was like blown away. I was like, man, if I took this class, like before I took that, this class would have been a lot easier for me to understand, because learning all of this, and walking in the door not knowing anything except for this is a bone.
Right, that's me right now.
You know,
Literally,
it can
that
be-
is me.
yeah,
I'm
it
like,
can
oh,
be
that's your skull.
Very overwhelming.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But
That's why I'm feeling like it's hotcakes.
But, yeah, when I took a biology class, and like, you know, like when we're talking about this, like, we had to do the chemical reactions and know each step of that cycle, the name, everything. And my teacher, he was a very strict teacher. Like, if you didn't left one letter out of the word, he was wrong. So, yeah. And he could know, like, I know that that's what you meant, but that's not what it used to be.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't like
Yeah.
this, but
You
you
know
know what I'm saying.
Yeah. I don't either,
Right,
but
yeah, but it makes you better.
it
Right.
does.
Because when
And
you
that's
go
what I was-
stuff out and they're not like, what's your
Then you
spell?
make me feel
And
it.
you're gonna be on your cue. you
Yeah,
know.
exactly. That's what I
It
was
makes
just,
you a better.
yeah, that's what I was just
education.
telling him. So it's been 14 years since I took this class. I still remember.
Because how strict he was. Yeah.
Yeah. You either knew it or you didn't.
No.
It's just like those interphase, prophase, those stages of
Yeah.
mitosis. We had to look under the microscope and tell you what stage that was in, what happened, what was it doing, why was it doing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, you know, yeah, so when I come in here, it's kind of just like,
Refresh.
yeah, coming back to me, 'cause it's been so long.
It looks like a bite you don't never
Yeah,
eat.
yeah,
Yeah.
But,
So,
yeah, I'm see if he'll make it.
and that's where the ear got.
I don't know where I
Is this
got
on the
that
PowerPoint?
from.
Because this look like the PowerPoint.
It might be. Some of this I got from the PowerPoint. Yeah, that does look like PowerPoint. It might be on the PowerPoint. I don't know.
Got it in.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's got a copy machine.
Yeah, I know, that's what I said. I'm just waiting for these talking to him. Maybe I'll copy and everything.
So I'm just saying.
So we know
Oh,
next
but-
Monday or this Monday coming up. He's gonna have some votes.
Yeah, this,
You know, the, microscope, the area over there, he's gonna have some.
Well, it's a hole.
It's gonna be long there and some.
Condor, so this is both areas, right? Environmental right there.
I don't know, I think he actually, I think I might have gotten it. Did y'all have one of these?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. And this right here, this is the one for medical terminology that I got, but I just want to switch guys that you can buy these for anything.
Yeah, cause I got this.
Just for- Yeah, I think I got these. For $5.
That's when we should have a bookstore. This is what I got.
Yeah, they're very good, like, good references, yeah, yeah.
I wonder if it has-
Yeah, she's looking for anatomy.
See, this is what it's saying.
I wonder if I went to like what's the name like that, like in books or something.
What, you mean like one of these? That's the one she's got his for anatomy.
No, I'm saying like what's the name or somewhere like that.
You mean like one of these or an actual like
Like, no,
a book?
like a
Oh,
book.
okay, okay. Where did you get yours from, you know?
Oh, the bookstore they had.
Okay, okay.
I got, oh.
I ordered mine from Amazon. I mean, I'm sure they probably have that too, you know.
Then I just gotta wait for it to come in. It's not like